Hello everyone, welcome to Space Dave Live number 10. We're in double digits now, so it's all happening. So thank you so much for joining us tonight. I am Dave, and with us tonight we have got the hardcore of our studio audience, the dedicated ones who always show up every week. Thank you so much guys for coming along again. And over in the back there we have Jess, who is helping us out with social media and all the technical things. So if you comment in the live chat and whatnot and you get any answers, it's Jess that you're going to be dealing with. I will also try my best to keep an eye on things, and hopefully we will keep a good eye on the chat. I think it's working a little bit better now, so we really are getting all of that together, I think, with your help. So thank you very much everyone. So let's get on with things tonight. I guess first of all, let's have a look at our program for this evening. So we'll start off with the introduction, the competition, the housekeeping and whatnot. With the news tonight, we do have a couple of other little updates on the NASA moon thing and SpaceX and whatnot. I don't want to spend too much time on it tonight because we've just been thrashing this whole thing with getting back to the moon. It is exciting, isn't it? It's cool, but we've got other stuff to talk about tonight out in the solar system and the wider universe. So I'm hoping we're going to spend a little bit of time on that tonight. If we do get time tonight, I would like to start also talking a little bit about where we're at with space exploration in general, where we've been, where we might be going beyond the moon, and some of that sort of stuff. We'll just see how we go with time for that, because it would be nice to start talking about some of that stuff as well. So shall we get started with the competition? We always start off with our competition. So tonight the competition is going to be related to the moon. We're talking a lot about getting back to the moon, with NASA's mission getting back to the moon, with private companies and things like that. We've talked about it extensively, and we'll be talking a little bit about it tonight. Tonight's competition will be, you will have to tell us when you think we're actually going to get back to the moon. So to help us out, if you can type exactly this in, or more or less that people will land on the moon in, and then just put whatever year you think, or if you think it's not going to happen, say people will not land on the moon or something like that. But if you can just make it clear that you're entering the competition, that sort of helps us get all the entries together. So just do that throughout the night. You might want to wait a little bit, perhaps until we've just talked about the moon stuff a little bit more, up to you. But anyway, so that's the competition. So just enter that whenever you like, and up for grabs tonight is the moon and stars. This is an awesome little box of the moon stickers and stuff, glow in the dark stars and a moon that you can put on the wall or on the ceiling. It actually comes with a little genuine, very small, but a meteorite sample in there. So that is an awesome prize. Very happy to be giving that away tonight. We can ship that anywhere in the world, so go for your life. Start entering whenever you want to. So with that, let's see if we can get just a little bit of housekeeping and stuff to do with the Space Center out of the way first of all. Now, the first thing actually is the audio sync. So we've had a little bit of trouble in the past, haven't we, getting the lip sync together. Now you guys helped me out a lot last week, so thank you for that. Let's just do another quick test. Hopefully we've got the audio and video lined up a little bit better. We did a clap test which helped us out a lot, so I'm just going to do that again now. So have a look and a listen. And I want you to tell me, is the sound sort of lining up reasonably well with the vision here. So if I go like that, if you can just post a comment saying if the sound's close enough or if it's before or after. So I'll do a couple of them. That should be enough. So if it's close enough, we're happy, we're going with it. If it's not, we'll keep working on it. Now the other thing is the chats that we were just talking about. So oh, looks, we've got a few comments in here. So, g'day guys, Fletcher, Mike, Flish Cat. I think I'm getting that right now. John and everyone else, Caitlin, Jaden, Nat, Karsten. Nice to see all you guys in here. Wendy, thank you for joining. So, now, what did I need to say about the chat? I know what it was. We're trying our best to keep up with the chat as it happens. It's not that easy, but I think we're getting there. But the other thing I have noticed is that some people are watching the show, the recorded version, after we've been live, and it's not always clear that you're actually watching the recorded version. So some people are thinking they're watching it live, but it's actually recorded. So we go live on Wednesday night at 7 p.m. New Zealand time. and through till about 8 or a little bit after 8. If you're watching it after that, you're watching the recorded version. And that can be a bit confusing because on YouTube especially, during the live show, you can look on the right-hand side of the page and I'm not quite sure how it works on mobile, sorry. But anyway, there's a live chat there that you can participate in. Once the show's finished, you can't use that anymore. You can still see them, but you can't actually post comments in that part anymore. From then on, you post comments underneath the video as you would in a normal recorded video on YouTube. So I'm actually hoping that we can use that a little bit to carry on the participation. So I'm going to try after the show, in the few days after the show, to go and catch up with a few of those comments. And so feel free to still post comments and stuff there. So that was one thing about the chat. The other thing I quickly wanted to mention while I think about that is because a lot of our views, most of them actually, are after the show, they're watching the recorded version, it would be nice to have a competition that you guys can enter. So I'll try and do it. Perhaps next week we can maybe have another competition so that everyone gets to participate in it. Anyway, that's enough of that. I was going to do just sort of a quick summary of where we're at with the show, actually being up to number 10. I don't really want to spend too much time on this though, but perhaps a couple of quick comments. We've been going a few months now. I think everything's going pretty well, really. We're getting really nice comments. Thank you all so much. And I think it's actually looking pretty good for the future. So on YouTube, we're up to about 400 subscribers now, which is pretty small numbers. We could do with some more, but it is growing. I think we've actually doubled in the last week, so that's nice. Facebook, we've got 5,000 or 6,000 followers on there, so that's looking a little bit more healthy. Please help us out by spreading the word, but I think we are getting there. Well, I've mentioned this a few times. Perhaps one of the biggest challenges we've got here is money. It does cost us money to run this show. So if there's any way you can help out financially, we would certainly appreciate that. And that brings us, of course, to our Patreon page, which I think I've got just over here. Let's have a quick look at that. So this is our Patreon page. You can see the URL up there. It is just patreon.com/Space Center, and it's pretty straightforward. If you want to help us out, you can just go there and sign up with one of the tiers there. Just, I mean, $1 a month is that would be a big help. If we could get a few hundred people to give us $1 a month, that would really make a big difference. We need about $500 a month to just pay our bills to keep the show going. So if there's any way you can help out, that would be spectacular, and we really appreciate the people that have already got on board with that. And since last week, we have had some new patrons on there, and it's time to give them a shout out. So welcome to our new patrons. Thank you so much. Wendy Bellhouse, Ashley Seabright, and Vienna Seabright. So now, these guys have been very supportive and have said some really nice things about the show, but I wanted to make a special mention of Vienna, who is 9 years old and is contributing some of her own money every month to help us keep the show going. So yeah, that's cool, isn't it, guys? Let's have a thumbs up. Yeah, big thank you to Vienna. Good on you. That is a really cool effort, and we really, really do appreciate your help, Vienna. So you can know that you are helping to keep this show up and running. So good on you. So everyone else, Vienna can do it. Look into your heart. You know what's right. Help us out. Yeah, but seriously, you know, we're not, well, we are begging for money, aren't we? But anyway, let's not go on too much about that. We appreciate any support, anything you can do to help spread the word. Actually, look, that's as good as anything if you can just help get the word out there. I think that's about all the housekeeping I want to do, because I think we really want to get on and talk about some space news. That's what we're here for, isn't it? So first up, we are going to talk a little bit about what's happening with NASA, with getting back to the moon. Now, if you're new to the show, we've been talking about this a lot recently, about NASA's whole mission to get back to the moon. NASA wants to get back to the moon by 2024. What I'm going to do first up, actually, is I'm going to show you a short video here. This is a video by NASA, and it's just sort of a promotional thing about how and why they're getting back to the moon. Actually, it's more about how, really. But anyway, let me just bring that up, and we'll watch this. It's just a few minutes long, so here we go. Let's have a look at this.
50 years ago, we pioneered a path to the moon. The trail we blazed cut through the fictions of science and showed us all what was possible.
Very pretty out here.
Today, our calling to explore is even greater. To go farther, we must be able to sustain missions of greater distance and duration. We must use the resources we find at our destinations. We must overcome radiation, isolation, gravity, and extreme environments like never before. These are the challenges we face to push the bounds of humanity. We're going to the moon to stay by 2024, and this is how.
This all starts with the ability to get larger, heavier payloads off planet and beyond Earth's gravity.
For this, we designed an entirely new rocket.
The Space Launch System. SLS will be the most powerful rocket ever developed.
And with components in production
and more in testing,
this system is capable of being the catalyst for deep space missions.
we need a capsule
that can support humans from launch
through deep space and return safely back to Earth.
For this, we've built Orion.
This is NASA's next-generation human space capsule.
Using data from lunar orbiters that continue to reveal the moon's hazards and resources,
we're currently developing an entirely new approach to landing and operating on the moon.
Using our commercial partners to deliver science instruments and robotics to the surface, we are paving the way for human missions in 2024.
Our charge is to go quickly and to stay, to press our collective efforts forward with a fervor that will see us return to the moon in a manner that is wholly different than 50 years ago.
We want lunar landers that are reusable,
that can land anywhere on the lunar surface.
The simplest way to do so is to give them a platform in orbit around the moon from which to transition.
An orbiting platform to host deep space experiments and be a waypoint for human capsules. We call this lunar outpost Gateway.
The beauty of the Gateway is that it can be moved between orbits.
It will balance between the Earth and Moon's gravity,
in a position that is ideal for launching even deeper space missions.
In 2009, we learned that the moon contains millions of tons of water ice.
This ice can be extracted and purified for water. It can be separated in oxygen for breathing or hydrogen for rocket fuel.
The moon is quite uniquely suited
to prepare us and propel us to Mars and beyond.
This is what we are building.
This is what we're training for.
This we can replicate throughout the solar system.
This is the next chapter of human space exploration.
Humans are the most fragile element of this entire endeavor, and yet we go for humanity. We go to the moon and on to Mars to seek knowledge and understanding and to share it with all. We go knowing our efforts will create opportunities that cannot be foreseen. We go because we are destined to explore and see it with our own eyes. We turn towards the moon now, not as a conclusion, but as preparation, as a checkpoint toward all that lies beyond. Our greatest adventures remain ahead of us. We are going.
We're going.
We are going.
We are going. We're going.
Sounds good, doesn't it? All looks good, sounds good. Hopefully it's going to happen. But there's a few things that we probably need to talk about there. So first of all, the news actually. So what's happened since last week is that NASA has announced that they have provided funding for 11 companies that are listed there for studies and making prototype landers for the moon, as well as some other things. I think some in-space refueling and a couple of other things there. So they've provided sort of seed funding to these private companies, commercial companies, to help them get back to the moon. So they provided about $45 million US, which actually isn't that much really. So it's not really for building the actual things. It's just for studies and prototype work. But that's just for the next 6 months. So that's a very short time frame. Again, there's just lots of happening. There's this real sense of urgency right now. So we did talk last week, didn't we, about, well, obviously the big announcement with Blue Moon. That's Blue Origin's thing at the top left there. The one on the bottom right is Lockheed Martin, another one of those companies. They've just come up with a concept drawing and some stuff. I'm not actually sure exactly where they are at with that. But anyway, so there's a bunch of those companies there that have now got some money to get on board with it. So there's some action there. The whole thing about, is NASA actually going to get back to the moon by 2024? Now I see in the comments a few of you are quite confident that that's going to happen, so good on you. Yeah, you got some confidence. So whether or not that'll happen, I'm not sure. Now there are some challenges. I guess There's probably two main areas of challenge that NASA is looking at here. The first one would be technical. So obviously they've got to be able to build the stuff, and all of those companies, whoever gets involved, is going to actually have to be able to overcome the technical issues. It's a very short time frame. 5 years is really not very long to design and build landers to get on the moon and all the other stuff that they need. So they've got that, but the other big problem, of course, is political and money. Are they actually going to be able to get the money that they need? Last week we talked about the budget request. President Trump has requested another $1.6 billion for NASA, but that's nowhere near enough. They're going to need a lot more over the coming years, and that's going to have to ramp up pretty seriously, I think. I mean, it's going to have to be multiple millions of dollars, billions at least every year between now and then. So whether or not they're going to be able to get that money, that's a big thing, really. So I've just got a couple of notes here that I just need to look at to make sure I've covered everything. So I should mention that those companies that we were talking about, they have to contribute at least 20% of the cost of what they're doing themselves, which is actually a really good plan. I think it's worked well historically, and I think that is a good plan. So NASA isn't just handing over money to anyone who feels like they want to do a study. So they have to contribute themselves. They're using a thing called undefinitized contract actions, which is a term I'd never heard before, but apparently that means it's a system so that they can start work immediately. And it doesn't actually necessarily mean that they've committed, or either party is committed to anything further down the track, but it means they can get things rolling really fast. So there's certainly stuff actually happening right now. So there's a lot of emphasis on streamlining the whole process here. The procurement process, what we're talking about here, getting these companies on board, normally takes a very long time. They're just going bang, bang, bang. Right, what do you got? Let's see, here's some money. So it's all really happening. I also just wanted to point out again that there's a lot of emphasis on the idea that they are sending the first woman to the moon. That every press release mentions that they're going to be sending the first woman back to the moon, which is kind of interesting in itself. I wonder if there's going to be a little bit of debate about that. I can certainly imagine some people getting on the whole thing and saying, oh, this is just PC, it's sort of like affirmative action or whatever, that sort of thing. To those people, I say, suck it up. That's what's happening, and I think we should get on board with it, and I think it's a good thing. I don't think NASA needs to mention it every 5 minutes, to be perfectly honest. I mean, I'm getting some laughter out there. I think you guys agree with me, really. I mean, it's happening. Look, I mean, the astronaut corps is basically, it's males and females anyway. It's been like that for a long time now. I don't think we need to make a big song and dance about the fact that women are in space. They've been in space since going right back to the 60s, but certainly with NASA since the 80s. So yeah, it's cool. I'm looking forward to seeing the first woman on the moon. I actually just don't think it's that big a deal, to be perfectly honest. It's part of space now, and I think we should just, yeah, anyway, I think that's probably enough of that. So look, if you're interested in more about the whole budget thing and the challenges facing NASA, The Verge put out quite an interesting article. I'll put the link in the show notes, but it's quite a long article here, talking about all those things that I've just been talking about. That's that same video there, by the way. So just going on and on about like which politicians are behind what and some of the challenges they're going to be facing. So that kind of gives a bit of an insight into some of the challenges facing NASA, and I think they have got a few. So of course the Congress is in the hands of the Democrats now, so there's a danger here of this becoming a partisan issue, of the trip back to the moon being seen as a thing that Trump wants. And I think that's pretty obvious what's happening, isn't it? I mean, he's made that date of 2024. If he gets re-elected, that would be his last year in office. It's a very short time frame, and there's all this focus. It's got to be done by 2024. No one's mentioning the presidential connection there, but I think it's obvious to everyone what's going on. So yeah, we'll see what happens. How's everyone's predictions going? I think everyone's still going 2024. Yeah, hopefully. We'll see, hopefully. So now, one other quick thing with the budget stuff. So NASA, there's often a problem with NASA with their budget that to fund one thing, the money gets pulled from some other budget. Interestingly, what's happening this time is that they're trying to get the money not from other NASA programs, but from other federal programs outside of NASA, in particular some education funding. So yikes. that's not too flash, is it? And I can see that being a problem. I mean, that doesn't sound too good to me, and I certainly can't imagine the Democrats being that happy about pulling money from education funding to send people back to the moon for Donald Trump's pet project. Yeah, so it could be an issue there. So if you want to revise your expectations, maybe. But it's not all doom and gloom. I think there are ways around this, and I'm hoping that they can get the funding from other areas so they don't have to pillage other really important federal funding. So anyway, that's one more, one or two maybe quick things here. I just wanted to point out another thing, another website here. This is on Reddit. This was an AMA, or Ask Me Anything. It's a thing that they do on the website Reddit, where experts or people who know about something go on there and people can ask whatever they want. Now this has already been, so you can't go and ask questions now, but it was you can see it there, where NASA experts working to send humans to the moon ask us anything. Now there was almost 2,000 messages here, so it's a long discussion, but it's really interesting. So these people are obviously representing NASA. So by the way, when you look down here, that little icon there with the microphone, that shows you that's a NASA person talking there. So if you're interested in that, go and have a look through it. There's a lot of really interesting discussions there about getting back to the moon. Right, so that is pretty much all I wanted to say about getting back to the moon thing, unless anyone's got any questions about that. Let's quickly check our chats actually. So let's just have a quick look through here. So yeah, a few, as I say, a few people going for 2024, a few people thinking a few years after that. Vienna thinks that people get to the moon in 2025. You may well be, you say it's a year after, isn't it? So yeah, that's a pretty good guess, I think. Okay, so a lot of you are being optimistic. I like it. So thanks for all the comments there. I can't read them all. It doesn't work for me. So I will definitely try and go back later and catch up on everything there. So remember about our competition, in which you have to, in case you've just joined us, you have to make a prediction of when you think we will actually get back to the moon. Post it in the comments or the chat, or you can email us or text it through to the details down there, and we will announce that at the end of the show. Right, one other quick thing about NASA. I've talked recently about some of the science going on the space station. I love everything to do with plants, growing plants in space. I think it's a thing that we really want to be working more towards becoming sustainable in space, and obviously it will be really important for longer duration missions, and this is just an interesting new thing that they've got on the space station. So they have been growing plants on the space station before. Plants in space that research has been going on for decades, and they're sort of ramping it up on the space station. They've had mixed success, I guess. On a small scale, they've been able to grow some plants up there. They've grown some lettuce. They've been able to start eating some of the food that they've been growing, but it is quite difficult growing stuff in space. And this new experiment hopefully will just ramp it up a little bit so they can start growing more food. For example, some food that requires more water than what they've been able to deal with in the past. So the link's in the show notes if you want to go and have a look at what's going on with that research. I love that whole idea. Right, so that's enough about NASA. Let's see, Jess, you will just call out if anyone's got any urgent questions, won't you, that we need to address with these things as we go through. So a quick mention of what SpaceX is up to. Now you remember last week we talked about this mission, which is their Starlink constellation of satellites for internet service. So they were planning on launching this. There's actually 60 satellites, believe it or not, in that rocket there. They were going to be launching it last Friday. That launch was delayed just due to weather, so not a big concern, but that launch is now set for this Friday. I'm pretty sure it's still afternoon New Zealand time, so if you want to watch that launch, go to spacex.com on Friday and you will be able to catch that. So that was just that thing, but the other thing with SpaceX that we've been keeping an eye on is the Starhopper. So this is the sort of prototype, the first test version of their big new rocket that they're working on. And we've been keeping an eye on the testing there. So far they have had one, I think it's just one, a tethered test, or kind of like a hold down test. So the whole rocket, it's just the short version of the rocket, is actually held down with tethers, and it just lifted off just a matter of centimeters off the ground. We're hoping that they will have a new test sometime, perhaps even towards the end of this month, where they will be going a little bit higher, perhaps some meters up, and yeah, just slowly working towards getting these tests going higher and higher. But Elon Musk has also announced an interesting strategy with building this new system there. So, in fact, he tweeted, let me just read you the tweet here, or a series of tweets. He said, SpaceX is doing simultaneous competing builds of Starship, that's sort of the big version, in Boca Chica, Texas, and Cape Canaveral, Florida. Both sites will make many Starships. This is a competition to see which location is most effective. Answer might be both. So he's basically setting up two teams within his own organization and kind of pitting them against each other and saying, right, whoever does the best, that's where we're going to go and build them. So it kind of sounds a bit weird, doesn't it? It's, very competitive, and you can imagine that it might get a little bit difficult, but I have heard of other companies doing similar things, and apparently it can work quite well. He did point out that any insights gained by one team must be shared with the other, but other team not required to use them. So yeah, we'll see how that goes. So that's just an interesting way of pushing things forward. So yeah, hopefully there'll be a test there later this month or sometime soon, and we will definitely report back if there's any big news there. Almost the end of the quick SpaceX update there. There's one other thing that I wanted to mention here. Elon Musk is going to be receiving a prize, apparently, and it is the Stephen Hawking Science Communication Prize. So it's an interesting choice, but this prize is given out by an organization called the Starmus, I think I've pronounced that right, Starmus Festival. And that is organized by these chaps here. This is a photo from the announcement of the festival back in February 2018. And I'm imagining all you people out there thinking, I know who that is. Hopefully you do. How many people know who that is? Anyone out in the audience know who we're looking at here? Who are we looking at?
Brian May.
Yeah, Brian May. Now, I think his name was actually on there, which was a little bit of a clue, wasn't it? So hopefully you saw that. But yeah, the guy with the awesome hair and guitar skills is Brian May, guitarist for the band Queen, who, if you don't know, is an astrophysicist. So back in the early 70s, he was actually working on his PhD when Queen started becoming really successful, and he abandoned his PhD to work on the band Queen, and it wasn't until many, many years later that he went back and finished his PhD, and he is now an astrophysicist, which is pretty cool, isn't it? What a guy. Amazing, what a life. Yeah, sometimes I think I've done pretty well with the things that I've achieved, and then I look at Brian May and think, oh, yes, I've got a way to go yet. Anyway, so that's not the point. The point is that, that this festival has decided to give the award for science communication to Elon Musk, which is an interesting choice. And now, on one hand, Elon Musk is actually a really good science communicator. He's done some good stuff. The way he talks about what he's doing at SpaceX, I think, is generally pretty good. He's got a reputation for being quite upfront and honest about what's going on there. When things go wrong, he normally is very forthcoming with information. The last anomaly notwithstanding. On the other hand, he says some dumb stuff too, doesn't he? He does some pretty dumb things. He certainly has done. I worry sometimes that he's just getting a little bit too tired and yeah, he lets things get on top of him. There was that whole incident where he called that guy a pedophile on Twitter and repeated it. Well, that's not good communication. So he's an interesting choice. It'll be interesting to see if there's any pushback on that one. Anyway, congratulations, Elon. You're getting a prize, so good on you. Right, I think that's all I wanted to say about SpaceX. Let's just see if we can keep a bit of an eye on our chat. Wow, there's lots coming in, isn't there? I'm just doing a quick squiz through here. So lots of people entering the competition. That is really good. Nat, I knew you'd get that one pretty quickly. The UFO. Oh, right, you can't miss the UFO model on the front lawn. I'm sort of missing some of the conversation there. So, right, I say Flishcat, thank you very much. And you have learned something new today, Flishcat. So it's awesome, eh? What a guy, Brian May. Very cool. Right, let's get on with some other stuff. So here's a quick update. You remember the poor old Beresheet mission? This was the one, a private non-profit company, non-profit organization called Space IL. They launched this mission to the moon. They tried to land it on the moon. It got almost, well, it did get all the way there, just not quite the way it was supposed to. So this was a selfie that it took just before it got to the moon. And unfortunately, some poor soul in the team back on Earth sent the wrong command, or so it was basically a software thing, sent the wrong command that caused the main engine to shut down, and it crash landed on the moon. Terrible, terrible business. But NASA's Lunar Reconnaissance Orbiter, which is a robotic space probe orbiting the moon, has got this photo of the crash site. So you can see this is a before and after, before, after, before, after. So you can see where it's crash landed there. So that's where it went down in flames. Ah, bad luck, but try again next time. Yeah, we're behind you. So that was just a quick update on that one. While we're at the moon, we have also talked about the Chang'e 4, the Chinese mission to the far side of the moon. The first time anyone has landed a lander and a rover on the far side of the moon to move around. Now they've had some interesting results coming back, which they will be very, very happy about. So what's happened is that this lander landed in a crater on the far side of the moon. It's an impact crater, and let me just go back a sec actually. So with the moon, we do know quite a lot about the moon, but perhaps not as much as you might think. We've got a pretty good idea of what we think is going on inside the moon. We think that the moon has a core, a mantle, and a crust in a similar way to what the Earth has, but we would really like to know a lot more about it. So what this rover has done is, and the lander, they've landed in this impact crater, and the hope was that whatever made that impact crater, whatever hit the moon and made that crater, might have thrown up some stuff from underneath the crust, the mantle, and brought it to the surface, and we might be able to find some of that and learn a little bit more about the interior of the moon. Now it turns out it's looking pretty promising. They have actually apparently they think found some of that stuff from the mantle, which will be a big help to learning more about the moon. Early days yet, these things take a long time to analyze and talk about and discuss, so I'm sure this will keep the scientists busy for a long time. But China is going to be wrapped with this. Like everyone that goes out to space, they want to talk up their credentials of science and finding stuff out and benefiting humanity, and they will be very, very happy with this result. I think that's a really good result for the China National Space Administration. So nice work. Right, before we leave the moon, one last reminder of our competition. Remember, we're asking you, when will people land back on the moon? The aim is 2024. Write that in the chat or comments and tell us your guess, and you'll be in to win this prize, this beautiful box of glow-in-the-dark stars and moon, and even a little wee genuine meteorite in there. So lovely prize. Happy to be giving that one away. Okay, what we're going to do now is we're going to move a little bit further out into the solar system and talk about some other stuff that has been happening. What we are looking at here is a pretty grungy looking diagram, I guess, or what this is showing is the inner solar system, the sun in the middle and the orbits of the planet Mercury, Venus, Earth and Mars. The blue ellipse that you see there is the orbit of an asteroid called Bennu. This asteroid is the target of a NASA mission which launched, I think, in 2016. Someone correct me if I'm wrong. Someone quickly Google it and tell me if I'm wrong. I think it was 2016. So now I've actually got a video. Look, I tell you what, I'll play you the short video that gives a bit of an introduction to that whole mission. I did a very fast and dirty edit of this, so I hope it's all okay. So this video was from earlier last year. So NASA has sent a probe to the asteroid. So yeah, they made this video last year, but it gives it just a little bit of an overview of what's happening.
There are many important reasons for studying asteroids like the target of OSIRIS-REx asteroid Bennu. First and foremost, for me especially, they're geologic remnants from the dawn of our solar system. They're literally the first material that formed around our star, and they represent the building blocks of planets, and we hope, in the case of Bennu, of life, and the reason that Earth may be a habitable planet in the form of delivering water and other important volatile material.
When we look at asteroids, which are these primitive objects, these little leftover pieces from solar system formation, and we find they may have organics, then that tells us perhaps the conditions for life could have erupted anywhere in the solar system and Earth was just right.
When we study meteorites, we think they represent these asteroids and their different histories, but they've all interacted with the Earth's atmosphere, its biosphere, its hydrosphere. And so we don't know what effect just interacting with the Earth has had on these meteorites. We really want to get samples that are pristine, and so we can do all of those things through this mission.
OSIRIS-REx is a mission in the NASA New Frontiers program. Our objective is to travel out to a near-Earth asteroid named Bennu, survey that object in great detail to understand its geology, its mineralogy and composition, ultimately select a single location on the asteroid surface to acquire a sample and return that material back to the Earth for scientific analysis.
By bringing a sample back to the Earth, such as OSIRIS-REx will do with samples of Bennu in 2023, we'll be able to look at the samples in laboratories around the world to understand in great detail the nature of the sample and its place in the origin of the solar system.
And one of the most exciting things to us, and relieving too to the engineers, is how closely the asteroid has resembled what we had predicted. Early on, our science team, prior to launch, had come up with a model of what they thought the asteroid would look like based purely on ground-based radar observations from Arecibo. And from that, they created a reference asteroid that we used as the requirements to design the mission against. But no one could be sure that the asteroid would really look like the scientists had predicted. So it's been a tremendous relief to us to find that the actual Bennu is very similar to what the scientists had predicted. So the science team really nailed it.
Throughout 2019, we'll be doing global characterization of the asteroid, basically making maps of the entire surface. We're interested in its topography. Are there craters? Where are the boulders, the valleys, the mountains of the asteroid? And then we want to understand the distribution of geologic materials. Are we finding different patches of minerals in one location versus another? And why are certain areas have a composition and others may be different? We're going to be looking, most importantly, for areas where we can collect a sample.
OSIRIS-REx will collect a sample from Bennu using our TAG-SAM, which is the Touch and Go Sample Acquisition Mechanism. What that is an arm connected to this sampler head that you see here. This is similar in size to an air filter from a car. How this mechanism works is there's compressed gas that is released that will stir up the regolith from Bennu, store it into this canister, which we will then put inside of our sample release capsule and bring back to Earth. We will collect the sample of Bennu in 2020 and return it to Earth in 2023.
Once we're in the vicinity of our home world, about 4.5 hours before impacting the top of the atmosphere, the spacecraft spins up and releases that sample return capsule. The spacecraft fires its engines to perform a deflection burn, going off into orbit around the sun, and the return capsule enters the Earth's atmosphere, targeting a landing in the Utah desert. I'll be there on site when we open that capsule up and we see those samples for the first time, and science begins at that point on the next phase of the mission, the sample analysis period.
Wouldn't that be cool? Wouldn't you like to be there, hey, when it lands, and be the first person to have a look in there and see see it come from deep space out there? It'll be something else. Now, just before we move on, a couple of quick things in the chat. Let's right, hello everyone that's all coming in and saying hi. Nice to see all you guys here. Now, there's a couple of questions I think here. Alpha Films, JPL is working on this mission. Actually, look, to be honest, I'm not quite sure about that. The principal contractor was Lockheed Martin for this. It's run by NASA, of course. The principal investigator, I believe, is from the University of Arizona. I'm not quite sure exactly what JPL's involvement in here would be. Thank you, Carsten, for your update there. OSIRIS-REx was launched 2016, yep, and went into orbit 3rd of December 2018. Thanks for that, Carsten. So let's just quickly check back up. Oh, one other comment there, just sidetracking for a sec. Did anyone see the Indian launch today? Yeah, well, maybe, but if you've been following, you'll know that I'm still filthy on the Indians after blowing up that satellite and putting a whole lot of rubbish in space. So I'm kind of not that inclined to talk about them for a little bit yet. They're still in the dog box as far as I'm concerned. So maybe we'll let them get back in the news shortly, but yeah. Anyway, that's enough about that. So anyway, so I think we've kind of caught up there, haven't we? So just make sure my scroll's working over here. Yep. So right. So where were we? We were talking about the asteroid Bennu. So you've seen a little bit of a background there. So this is really important stuff. As they were talking about, it gives us an insight into the early solar system and the creation of things in the solar system. And we might get back to something else there. But what I want to show you is that video there was before the orbital insertion. So you saw the first kind of close-up photos, but they're a bit grainy and not that flash. We now have some much better photos. So including this, look at, isn't that beautiful? Wow, amazing. So, but that's not all, there is more. So they've actually just released some much closer views of the surface of this asteroid. So that's one of, isn't this just absolutely gorgeous? Wow, look at it. Okay, so here we go. So that's what the surface of this asteroid looks like. You can see, so all of these rocks and stuff all clumping together. So I'm assuming that this sort of stuff, forms separately as per our general idea of how the solar system formed. You get all these small things clumping together and eventually start clumping into larger things. So you've got all these little things eventually coming into something that looks like that. Here's another, I think it's the last one of this series of photos. So look, yeah, that's what it would look like to walk around on an asteroid. I don't know how you'd go walking. I mean, you'd have to be pretty careful. The gravity would be so slow, so low that you'd go floating off. But I think these are just stunning photos. It's just amazing that we've got this stuff. So, yep, OSIRIS-REx, the mission is still orbiting around. Still looking for a sample site. So at the moment they're still in that phase of going around and just examining it, mapping it, learning what they can. And the idea is that they will identify about a dozen potential sites to go in and get that sample and then narrow that down to just one site. And what do they say? Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think they're collecting the sample next year and having it returned 2023. I think that's what they said, wasn't it? Yep, thank you. So, yep, something to look forward to. A fantastic mission, that one. So, that is the asteroid Bennu. Quick update on Mars 2020. That is the rover that is heading off towards Mars next year. Everything's coming together for that. So we looked a couple of weeks ago perhaps at the rover itself being all stacked and being finalized. This is the actual spacecraft that will send the rover to Mars. So what you're looking at there is that top bit there. I'll just highlight that. That's, I think they call it the cruise phase. That's the bit that basically takes the whole thing all the way to Mars. The bit underneath it, that's the protective cover and the heat shield for entry into Mars. So that whole part of it's coming together now. The rover's not actually in here yet, that's still somewhere else, but the next step I guess will be to mate them together and get the whole thing actually working. So that's all looking good for next year. We're really looking forward to that mission. Heading further out into the solar system, out at Pluto this time. So we're getting, well, you remember a few years ago the New Horizons mission that went past Pluto and got these beautiful photos, our first ever close-up photos of Pluto. And of course, we get all these images back really quickly, relatively quickly, but it takes a long time to study them and really try and figure out what's going on. It keeps the scientists busy for a long time. Now it's starting to look like that area there, the sort of heart-shaped area, you've sort of seen it in the news and stuff, it's sort of shaped a little bit like a heart there. This big lobe on the left there, that's called Sputnik Planitia. Have I got that right? Someone better look that up for me too. I think it's called Sputnik Planitia. Be embarrassing if I got that wrong. But anyway, they think that under there is a liquid ocean. Now, we do think that there are liquid oceans underneath other bodies in our solar system. For example, some of the moons of Jupiter, we think there's a liquid ocean underneath. But obviously, you have to have a bit of heat to keep that going. The further away you get from the sun, obviously the colder it gets, and things will freeze. So how do you keep something liquid? Well, on some of these moons of Jupiter, for example, it's the tidal forces which sort of flex and pull on the moons a little bit, and that, I guess you could say, generates friction and creates enough heat to keep something liquid. Out at Pluto, you're not going to get that. It's too far away to get much heat directly from the sun, and you're not getting tidal forces there. Pluto and its main moon Charon, or Charon, however you like to pronounce it, they are tidally locked with each other, which is kind of an interesting thing in itself, actually. I'm getting sidetracked, aren't I? I've got to be careful about this. But they are tidally locked, which means as they sort of all orbit around each other, they orbit a common point in the middle, the same sides face each other. A little bit like how our moon always has the same side facing towards us. With Pluto and Charon, both sides actually always face towards each other. So if you were on Pluto, its moon would seem to be in the same place all the time. What that means is there are no tidal forces to speak of, and that's not going to be enough to generate any heat there. So that's the question. How could you have a liquid surface, a liquid ocean under the surface? So scientists have figured out what they think would explain that. They think there's likely to be a layer of gas actually underneath the surface, a layer of gas between there and the ocean, which sort of insulates it from the cold and helps to keep it all going. I don't really know anything more about it than that, really. Links in the show notes if you want to go and find out more about it. I think I've got a link to the actual scientific paper that they were talking about. But that's kind of interesting. Anyway, we need to keep moving on here. We're going even further out into the solar system. Same mission, New Horizons, that went past Pluto. If you recall that it was just a flyby mission, so it flew past Pluto and its moons and then carried on further out with the idea of perhaps encountering one or two more things to learn about them. And the first one that came across was this beast called, well, nicknamed Ultima Thule. Its name on its left is just sort of a provisional name. So this is a really interesting looking thing here. We were talking before about finding things with asteroid Bennu that tell us about the early development of the solar system. So we're looking for something that is pristine, that hasn't been affected by other things, that has essentially remained the same since the early days of the solar system. Now if we go back to asteroid Bennu, that's much closer in. You saw the orbit before, it's sort of between Earth and Mars. There are other things around here. It'll be interacting even just through gravity by other things here. There's chances that it's been hit by things, whatever. Anything closer to the middle of the solar system is less likely to be completely pristine. When you get a long way out, like this thing is, this is going to be even more pristine. So scientists are really keen to learn more about this. Now what we're looking at here appears to be mainly two separate bodies. They actually call it a contact binary. So binary, two things, but instead of just orbiting around each other, like Pluto and Charon actually, that's a binary system. Ignoring the other moons, but this one obviously they've come into contact, so they're kind of spinning around. It's a contact binary, and if you look on the right side there, the bigger lobe there, you can kind of see, if I sort of, if you look around there, it appears to be made of they reckon about 8 smaller pieces. So this looks like a really good example of what we were talking about before, of things kind of moving together and slowly forming bigger things. Towards the middle of the solar system, you've got more stuff, more things colliding, coming together. Further out, you're going to get less of that sort of stuff. It's just much bigger, much more space. And so this is kind of like, I guess it's a failed larger object, isn't it? It's kind of like the first part of that process of things coming in together. So that's looking really awesome. Link in the show notes if you want to go and learn more about what is happening there. I think that was all I wanted to say about that one. Yep, it is. Right. Time's moving along. Let's move much further out. We're heading outside our solar system to one of the favourite stars that people like talking about, our good friend Betelgeuse. If you're not familiar with this star, it's a red supergiant star. It's in the constellation of Orion. You can see it yourself easily with the naked eye. It looks red when you look at it. And this star is about to go supernova. Actually, it's getting right near the end of its life. So as stars do when that happens, they expand, they get bigger and bigger and bigger, and they start doing some funny things and sort of bulging and pulsating and doing weird stuff. So this star could actually explode any time in perhaps the next 100,000 years. So make sure you keep an eye on it, and if you see it go, do tell me, because I'd like to know about it. But what we're looking at here is the highest resolution image we've ever got of Betelgeuse, or of any star apart from our own one. So it's a bit of a blurry image, isn't it? It's a little bit like the black hole image. In fact, that's a good point actually. This isn't a true color image. This was taken by the ALMA telescope, which is a radio telescope. So, but it is an image. I think you can call it a photo. So most stars in the sky, just about all of them really, when you look at them through a telescope, you don't see them as circles. They still just look like points of light like they do to the naked eye. That's not really what you're looking for when you look through a telescope. So it's unusual to actually be able to resolve a star as anything other than a light point. So this is pretty neat. It's pretty cool. You can actually start seeing some sort of detail there. Now, I'm sure people are going to be, hang on, let's look at the comments here. Do I mean the rubber duck? Was it? No, the rubber duck was a different thing, wasn't it? The rubber duck was one of the comets, wasn't it? I think that was a comet that they were talking about that was often called the rubber duck. Mike, do I have any information on the Parker Solar Probe? We'll get back to that. Don't let me forget, Mike. So I'm just quickly whizzing through some of the other comments here. Right, anyway, so People are likely to ask, what's the bright spot there? Well, I believe that's, like I was saying before, it starts to sort of pulsate and become a little less symmetrical and doing some funny things. And I think we're seeing a higher concentration of some particular gas there. But honestly, I don't actually know anything more about it than that. Link in the show notes if you want to go and have a look at that. So, right, we're getting, we're getting near the end here. We might just have to do a quick reminder of our competition. When you think people will land on the moon, you're running out of time if you want to enter the competition. So get your entries in very quickly. Quick look at what's happening over here. Just whizzing through all this stuff. Yeah, lots and lots of comments there, isn't there? How long between manned landings on the moon? So, Lisa, if you're talking about between the last landings, 72 wasn't it, the last one? So the first moon landing, we're celebrating the 50th anniversary this year. So it's been a long time between drinks going to the moon. Now, everyone's happy that we did actually go to the moon, aren't you? Yeah? Everyone's happy with that? Good. We're not going to argue about that, are we? Awesome. Okay. So anyway, I wonder if we should, how's that time? Yes, we've got, what I'll do is I'll just do a quick mention of a couple of these other news stories that we've got here. So this one, I don't really have any images or anything to back this one up, but they think that sometime in the distant past, some very large strange object poked a big hole in the Milky Way galaxy. So if you're familiar with the Milky Way galaxy, it's sort of more or less a disc shape with those sort of spiral arms that come out. Sorry, I don't have any graphics right now for that. But they think that sometime in the past, something has come through and perhaps gone through the Milky Way and left quite a big hole in it. So if you're interested in that, this is the whole presentation there. Link in the show notes. You can go and look that one up. Another quick one here, this refers back to a story that we were talking about a few weeks ago, and this was all related to the expansion rate of the universe. So do you remember this graphic, those of you who've been with us for a few shows? This was talking about the expansion of the universe, and I sort of made the comment that this is roughly how astronomers, generally speaking, think that the universe has expanded. Sorry, we don't have time to go and recap the whole thing now. It was about 2 or 3 episodes ago that we talked in more detail about it. But I made the comment that something sort of still doesn't really feel quite right about this, and I'd be very surprised if we didn't find out that something about the Big Bang Theory is off. Now, in my opinion, we're on the right track with the Big Bang, I think. That's where all the evidence seems to be pointing. However, there are problems with it, and I'd be very surprised if there isn't some tweaking to be done yet in terms of perhaps how fast the universe is expanding, especially how fast it has expanded and at what points in the past, and perhaps how old the universe is. So scientists tend to be very confident about how old the universe is. For quite a long time it was 13.7 billion years. We're very confident about that. Then there was just a little tweak. Oh, it's actually 13.8 billion years. But now we're very confident about that. I actually reckon there's a pretty good chance that that may yet change. And a paper has just come out. I don't expect you to read even the abstract for this one. It's all very wordy and quite dense stuff. But basically the long and the short of it is that they are saying the universe may actually be 1 billion years younger than we had thought. So we'll keep an eye on this one. Who knows? I think people will argue about this for ages. Link in the show notes if you want to go and look more into this one. But it would not surprise me if it turns out that we are off. As I say, I think we're on the right track, but it wouldn't surprise me if there are many tweaks to be done with this yet. Right, I think I've got time for perhaps one more quick mention of a thing. This is, have you heard of, what do they call it? Star shot. No, I've got that right. A breakthrough star shot. That's what it's called. It's this idea that you can send a tiny, tiny wee little thing that, I guess you call it a spaceship, but it's a wafer scale spacecraft, like the size of a wafer. And the idea is that something this small, you might actually be able to send it to another solar system in a reasonable time frame. So it's an interesting concept. We won't talk any more about it now, but I just wanted to mention that they have been doing more tests on this, and they are quite serious about it. I think there's a real push to try and get this thing done. Now, Stephen Hawking was into this, wasn't he? I'm pretty sure he liked this whole idea and was a big supporter of it. Anyway, go and look it up if you want to find out more about this. One last thing I'm going to mention. I don't have anything to show you with this, but it's You know Bill Nye, the science guy. I'm sure you've all seen Bill Nye, the science guy. He released a video just recently. I can't show it to you for two reasons. First of all, I couldn't actually find a source where I could get permission to show it. So I'm not quite sure how they originally released it. But it's on lots of different news channels. The second thing is it's not safe for work, which was quite a shock. So Bill Nye's very sort of family-friendly, appealing to kids and stuff. And to see him swearing in a video was, whoa, really, was that? I thought it had been doctored actually the first time I saw it. But the long and the short of it is, go and look it up. It's a very short video about climate change, and he's getting angry. He's getting really angry about climate change, and I think he's going for a little bit of shock value there. So it's quite funny, but quite hard hitting. So go and look that up. If you search for Bill Nye swearing about climate change, you'll probably find it. So anyway, that was all I wanted to say there. We are getting near the end of the show. We didn't have much in our fake news segment tonight, so I like to talk a bit about any news that is either fake or sort of misleading, and it's usually headlines and stuff. I had a couple tonight, but I've only got a screenshot of one of them. This is going back to the Pluto thing that we were talking about. This sort of thing really annoys me. Pluto has an underground ocean kept warm by a layer of gassy ice. As I said before, they don't know that. It might be. It looks like a good explanation. It fits models and stuff. You know, they've created simulations that it would explain it. Now, this is New Scientist. These guys should know better. This is a respectable organization, a respectable publication. And again, I really think the problem is in the headline writers. So the way print publications tend to work is that someone will write the article, but a sub-editor or someone else writes the headlines, and they're always getting it wrong, and it bugs me no end. So the article is actually fine, but the headline is quite misleading. They don't know that that's what has happened. I can't remember what the other one I was going to show you now, but it was a similar thing. I think it was about the moon, but it's just that same thing. The headline saying scientists have discovered this, when they haven't actually. They're sort of on the path, they're working on it. So you've got to be really, really careful with these headlines, because of course so many people, they only look at the headlines and then they go and share it and they talk about it, and next thing it sort of becomes knowledge that scientists have discovered a thing. Then they find out that it wasn't true, and then the story is the scientists got it wrong. And it's intensely annoying for people like me that all this stuff happens. It's the reporting that's at fault, it's not the scientists. Jess, hang on a sec. Let's come over to you, Jess. What have we got over there?
There's just a few people asking where are the show notes.
Oh, God, thank you for that, guys. Where are the show notes? So, look, I actually had meant to talk about that before. Let me see if I can, just bear with me a sec. I will bring up our website over here. So let's just go over and have a look at that. So this is our website. If you go to spacecentre.nz, I've just had a thought the show notes aren't actually available yet, but they will be. Sorry about that. This is how it's supposed to work. If you go to our website and you just click on the Space Dave Live there, or just go to spacecentre.nz/live. Now this is where we have archives from all our old episodes and other information about it. So yeah, I haven't updated tonight's one yet. What I normally do is I update it that night or in the morning. But if we just have a look at one of our previous episodes, if you go down here, for example, last week's one, we click on that and that just gives you the video, and there's all our show notes there. So you can go through and just have a look at it. It's got all the links and bits and pieces there. So I should be able to upload the show notes tonight pretty quickly after the show. So sorry, I actually completely forgot about uploading that beforehand, which was a bit silly, wasn't it? While I think about it, we've been talking a lot about the Patreon thing and things that we can offer patrons. And it turns out that a popular idea is to be able to get behind the scenes and have a little bit of a chat about how we make the show, and perhaps help plan the show even, and look at what's coming up. So one of the things I'm thinking that we could offer our patrons as a bit of a reward is to show you what I work on before we actually do the show. So what I've been doing for the last couple of weeks is I've actually been putting those show notes together and, whoops, wrong screen, and making them in such a way that I'll be able to share it with other people. So the idea is in the week before the show, I'm just sort of slowly getting all of this information together and just making notes to myself about what we're going to talk about, and that is literally what I look at during the show. So when you see me talking about stuff and I'm glancing over here, I'm looking at these show notes. So that's where it all is. And if you want to get the heads up so that you know what we're going to be talking about before everyone else, and that will give you a chance to go and have a look at the links so that you can then post lots of knowledgeable comments and look very smart, you need to give us money. You need to sign up on Patreon, and maybe you will get the inside running on what's happening. So that's just a thought, but I think it's quite a good thought. Just tell me if I'm wrong, but I think that's what people were quite keen on, that idea of the behind the scenes stuff. You get other rewards as well, it's not just that. Anyway, so there we go. It's coming up to 8 o'clock, so we need to talk about our competition. So how are we looking out there, Jess? Have you collated all our entries? You have, so tell you what, why don't you bring it up the front and we will get someone to draw a name out of the hat. So how this works is on these competitions, so that we get everyone, give everyone a chance to get into it, we just put all of the entries into the space helmet over there, we pull a name out of the hat, and that's the competition. Okay, let's give it a go. Who wants to pull the name out of the hat? Helmet. Anyone? By the way, while they do that, I hope that noise in the background isn't too much. Hang on a sec, Wendy. There's an awful lot of very heavy machinery on the road outside, and it's really loud in here, so I hope it's actually not too bad for you guys. So, we've got the name here. So it is Tristan. Tristan, you have one. Is that Illich? I'm not quite sure about that. Sorry if I've got that wrong, but Tristan, you have won the beautiful little, where are we? Sorry, the beautiful little box of glow-in-the-dark moon and stars with a genuine meteorite in there. So very nice prize. Okie dokie, let's have just one quick wrap up of the chats. Let me just see if I've got any other notes that I need to talk about. Righto, I think that's clickbait. Tams, you did right. That's what it's all about, isn't it? It's clickbait, that stuff. It's annoying, but anyway, it is what it is. Righto, I think that's about all. Everyone's just saying thank you very much. Thank you again for everyone. Sorry I don't go through and recognise and talk to every single person who's commented here. It's kind of a little bit of a juggling act here between trying to acknowledge everyone and just getting on with the show. So, but we really do appreciate all the comments. After the show, I go through and I do read all of the notes, all of the comments, and I appreciate every single one of them. So Tristan, you need to get hold of us via a private message, or somehow you can text us or email us, and we will organise getting your prize to you. So thank you very much. Thank you, Jess. Thank you to our live audience at the Space Centre here tonight for joining us. We really appreciate you guys coming out on these cold winter nights. Thank you everyone for watching tonight. Hope you've enjoyed the show, and we will see you back here again, same time next week. Bye-bye.